Hey everybody, this video is going to be a bit different because it's not just about one thing. It's going to be about lots of things, and not all of my thoughts are going to be fully formed. My thoughts are never fully formed because there's always more to learn. In all seriousness, there are a lot of topics to do with sex, relationships, our bodies, sexuality, all of that stuff that I haven't covered, even though I've been doing this for like a decade now. And there are lots of reasons for that. And I thought we could chat about that and also do a quick fire of a bunch of sex topics and my current formed thoughts around them, or lack thereof maybe. So to give this video and what I do a bit more context, here are some things that I am not. I am not a medical or healthcare professional. I am not a therapist. I'm also not an investigative journalist. Can't even say that word. And I'm also not an academic. Did I want to be at some point? I don't know. Thought about the idea of doing an MA, but here we are. Here are some things that I am though. I am an educator, I am a communicator, and I am a somewhat knowledgeable person on the topic of sexuality. Hooray! Am I also a person with imposter syndrome when it comes to all of those things? Yes. But that's not what this video is about. So there are a lot of reasons why I maybe haven't done an entire video about a certain topic. And these are the main ones that I could think of. The first is that I just don't feel like I know enough about the topic. Maybe that is part imposter syndrome, but as we will come to later, it's also part just lack of time and resources and stuff like that. Another reason is that I just don't feel like I'm the right person to talk about that topic. A lot of what I do does come from personal experience. Like I definitely draw a lot on that to inform my content, but it also informs just like what I'm currently interested in terms of exploring further and making videos about, and also like what I'm learning about in general. As someone though who is a sex educator, I do feel like that shouldn't necessarily get in the way, because not all sex educators talk about things from their personal experience, especially ones that like actively go into schools and run workshops and classes with young people. Like it's very much the subject based and not about them at all, but hello, I'm a YouTuber, so it's about me sometimes. And when it comes to the topic of sexuality, it is experienced so differently when you come at it from different intersections of identities. And I am a cis, straight, white woman, I'm middle class, all of those things. And so there are just some things that I'm like, I don't feel like I'm the right person to be speaking on that. But then there's always the counter to that, which is because of some of those identities I have, I maybe have a larger platform than others. And so I should be speaking on these topics because I can like get messages out there or platform other voices, say. Speaking of which, sometimes I feel like it's not gonna work as a YouTube video, and that subject matter would fit better as a podcast episode where I'm interviewing somebody who is either an expert in that topic or somebody who has personal experience with something. So there are a lot of topics where I don't have like a hard and fast rule for it. I'm not sure how to explain it, but I'm like, that's not gonna work as a YouTube video. But if we can find someone that would work great as a podcast episode. I think part of that is also due to like the nature of YouTube and what kind of videos work well on the platform these days, because like back in like 2012 to 2014, like YouTube was collab central. You'd just be like inviting people on your channel like all of the time and doing all of these collabs and stuff, but with other YouTubers. But now I'm less interested in collaborating with other YouTubers necessarily, and just collaborating with other people in the sexuality field. And one, that might not be very YouTube friendly anymore because collabs have kind of like fallen out of favor on the platform, but also they might not be great on camera, but they might be great to chat to for an hour on a podcast and like really get deep into it, you know? So another reason is that I just currently do not have the time, the skills, or the resources to like research topics further, these gaps in my knowledge. Part of that though is that research is one of my like least favorite parts of my job. So I am a bit more reluctant to like prioritize doing that. However, one of the things I'm working on is like working with researchers and writers who can kind of like bring their expertise and bring their skills and like work on videos together with me. So hopefully that means a lot more videos that have just been like sitting on my ideas list for years will eventually get made, because I just do not have the capacity to like deep dive into that topic, but I find it really interesting and I can give it to somebody else and pay them to do that for me. And then the final reason, and this is similar to the collab stuff, but I'm just not sure how to make that topic into a good and algorithm happy YouTube video. So there might be a topic or something like a theory or a framework or something that I'm really interested in exploring, and I'm like, that's really cool, but I'm like, how do I make it into a YouTube video? What's the format? What's the structure? What's the hook? All of these things I'm also thinking about at the same time when it comes to making YouTube videos. Does this video have a good format, structure, or hook? I don't think so. So if you're here watching it, thanks. You want to know the inner workings of my brain and get to know a few more sex topics, which we are moving on to now. So I have a whole list of topics, and this is like a mixture of ideas that are sitting on my video ideas list and have been for months or years, and then also just like other topics and things that I've come across, also things that maybe I do speak about in some videos, but I've never made like an entire dedicated video about that thing. Sometimes because the topic is so massive, you're like, but what's this specific video about? What's the angle? What's the angle? Before we dive in though, there's going to be like a whole mishmash of topics that we're going to talk about. There's going to be a lot of tonal shifts. Trigger warnings will be in the description and also in like YouTube chapters, so you can scrub along and skip any stuff that you do not want to hear about. Okay, here we go. Sex addiction is not real. This is something that I came across during my IC Sexuality Educator course, and I was like, oh my god, mind blown. And this is also an example of things that like sex therapists and clinicians know, but it hasn't made its way down to public mainstream discourse or consciousness, basically. And ideas like this are the things that I'm so passionate about, like bridging that gap between what clinicians know to be true and what the public know to be true about sex. I've not quite figured out how on earth to make a YouTube video about this, but ding, 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 podcast episode with psychosexual therapist Silva Neves is out, or will be out soon. But I interviewed him all about sex addiction, all about compulsive sexual behaviors. So yeah, there's no 20-minute video about it, but there is like a 45-minute to an hour long podcast episode about it with an expert. Another thing that we talked about in that episode from like listener questions was about sexual trauma, and that is also something that I have not covered on this channel. I occasionally in videos will mention things to do with sexual trauma or rape and sexual assault, but I've never done an entire video about these things. I think because the topic scares me, I worry about like how heavy that is going to be, and obviously I know how important it is. I'm not entirely sure like what exactly I would want to say about it. Shan Boody recently posted some clips from her podcast on her YouTube channel where she had a conversation with somebody about sexual assault, and what she said at the beginning of that about why it's not something that she's really talked about on her YouTube channel before really resonated with me in terms of like why it's a topic that I've also avoided a lot of. Like I tend to kind of talk about it by talking about consent. So not directly talking about sexual violence, but kind of like talking about how to avoid it. The next thing is a framework, a theory, an idea, a something that I came across also during IC. It's the circles of sexuality, and this is developed by Dennis Daly. And I have a diagram for you. So obviously we've got to whip out the trusty whiteboard. I'm gonna just like position it like this. So can you see it all? I'm just gonna sit here and do it like this. Because we're trying to be as quick fire as possible. Was it quick me drawing these terrible cursed circles? No. So my favorite thing about this is that it really shows just how expansive the topic of sexuality is and how it impacts so many different parts of our lives in terms of our values, our attitudes, behaviors, family, friends, partners, politics, like society, media, like education, medical stuff, like all of these things. And that's why I find this really compelling. The reason why I've not made a video about this is because I don't know how to make a video about this that isn't just me like explaining it and like reading what it is, which you could just get all of that information if I just sent you a link to a picture of it. So I definitely want to dive into a bit more about like what it all means and stuff, so I can maybe figure out a way to create an interesting video about it. But for now, the 5 circles, is that 5? Yes, are sensuality, intimacy, sexual identity, sexual health and reproduction, and sexualization. So back to our sex topics list. Another one is abortion and miscarriage. This is something that I think I've mentioned in videos, especially in like episodes of Pleasure Trove, when it comes to abortion and like abortion laws and things, but I've never made like an entire video about it. They're just such huge topics. I did do a podcast episode with an abortion doula all about abortion and miscarriage care, and that was a really interesting chat, so you can listen to that again if you want like a deep dive into these that is more of a deep dive than you would maybe get if it was a video. Similar to that, another topic that I don't think I've done like an entire like exclusive video about, but it comes up in a lot of videos, is around trans rights and trans people. And again, there's been lots of podcast episodes with different trans people as well, covering all sorts of different aspects of that. And it's been mentioned in videos too, but yeah, I've never done an explicit video about it. That probably comes under the why of I don't feel like it's necessarily like my place to, and which is why I like to kind of platform trans people on my podcast. But yeah, I don't know. Another one is BDSM. Like, have I made an entire video about BDSM that wasn't the sex quiz, like the BDSM test thing? But again, that's a topic that has been covered on my podcast recently with Amp from What's the Safe Word. I am not a BDSMer. I am not a kinkster. So again, it's another area that I'm like, other people are so much more knowledgeable about this than I am. I am more knowledgeable about it than like maybe most of my friends, like my vanilla friends, or like your average person. But when you're kind of like sitting in that place of knowledge, you're just like aware of all of the people who are like so much more knowledgeable than you. But yeah, I know that I don't have to be an expert in everything. And this is something that Ali Abdul talks about on his YouTube channel a lot as well, which is like not being the expert, but being somebody's guide. So you're actually only like a little bit ahead of like your audience in terms of knowledge. Like, you don't have to be like the oracle on everything, and that's something that I'm trying to like embody more. I know a little bit more than you, but also you might know a little bit more than me about other stuff as well, and so we're like learning from each other and like on the journey together kind of thing. There we go. Another area is like ethical porn. Again, podcast episodes about this. I will scream and shout whenever I talk about porn in my videos, like pay for your porn, and like ethical and feminist porn exists and it is out there. But again, I don't think I've done necessarily like an entire video about it. Like, a lot of the behind the scenes stuff of the porn industry is not something that I feel like I know enough about, but I can interview people who are in the porn industry. So the podcast. Is this video just an entire plug for my podcast? I don't know. STIs? Have I ever done a video that's like all about STIs? I think one of the reasons is because of the not being like a healthcare professional. Like, I could do something that's a bit more about like the social stigma, like that's more my area, or like even media depictions and like how we talk about STIs. And stuff like that, but actually going into like what each STI is and like how you catch each STI and how you treat each STI and like all of that kind of stuff, like I know the basics. But yeah, that's another one. Parenting. Talking to children and young people about relationships, about their bodies, about sexuality. This is, again, something that's on my podcast with Melissa from Sex Positive Families, who is amazing. But this is something that I feel like I'm personally on a journey of learning as someone who is going to become a parent next year. I definitely want to embody a lot of sex positive parenting. And whilst I feel like I have absorbed some good stuff from my work as a sex educator, from people like Melissa from Sex Positive Families, I feel like there's still like a lot more to learn, and there's a lot of stuff that I'm still just like, what happens if your 3-year-old is like, Mom, what's sex? I'll be like, okay, let's go there. I have the Sex Positive Families book, which is like sex positive talks to have with your children, and I have that, and I've not read it yet, but I'm ready and primed. Like, I'm gonna go fully into it. But I think that's something that you might see videos about in the future, as I start kind of learning more about it, but then also kind of like from experience as well, in terms of like what goes well and what maybe was a fumbly mess. Sex and capitalism. This is something that comes up a lot on the podcast. I feel like it's just always like, aha, and capitalism is the culprit for why this is bad. But I've never figured out how to make like an entire video about the impact of capitalism on sex and our sex lives. But it's a huge topic. It's such a big topic, and it's everywhere. Not just in a practical sense of like spending money on our sex lives, spending money on our dating and love lives, and even like the sexual wellness industry and kind of like corporate sex positivity and things like this. Not just that, but that is obviously a big part of it. But also like the values that capitalism teaches us, which is that you can fix any problem by spending money, but also what capitalism convinces us of is that there is a problem in the first place. And you see that playing out in sexuality all of the time. Like, I get a lot of questions from people being like, blah, 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 this is my sex life, is this normal? Because they're worried that there's something wrong with them. But actually, there's nothing wrong with you. We're just like taught that stuff is wrong with us. And then it's like, here, have this to fix it. Like, buy this thing to fix it. It's really icky. So there's a lot to unpack there. Okay, what else is there? Sexual health and well-being is a human right. This is something that I really strongly believe in. Not entirely sure how to articulate that in a YouTube video. The concept of virginity. This is something that we talked about with Kate Lister, who wrote A Curious History of Sex on my podcast. I would love to make an entire video about like the concept of virginity and where that comes from and why it's bullshit. Learning rope bondage. This has been on my video ideas list for so long, like pre-pandemic, but obviously like doing stuff in person with people. Like, I would love to visit somebody like a rope expert or whatever in London and learn how to do some rope bondage, but I'm just not very excited about being around lots of people at this point, but maybe that'll happen soon. Who knows? I really want to do a video about why sex toys are so expensive, because I'm interested in knowing why. I want to know about like the production process and like what kind of determines the price of a sex toy. There is obviously a huge range of prices of sex toys. If you go at the really cheaper end though, they're not great. They're like not body safe. They are not good for you. Like, I honestly wouldn't recommend them. But I'm like, there are also sex toys that are like so expensive. And I'm like, what are you paying for here? And I'm really interested in exploring like why. Period positivity is something that I want to cover. Obviously, as an ethos, a lot of my videos from the Hormone Diaries and stuff that have featured periods and been about periods are period positive. But I wanted to like dive in a bit more about like the bigger picture of what it means to be period positive as a person, as a society, as a medical institution, in the education system, and all of these kinds of things. How to initiate sex. This is another one that's been on my video ideas list for a long time. I came across this like initiation style preference thing in the Come As You Are workbook, and actually me and my husband Dan went through it for a like exclusive Patreon podcast thing that we do called the Hand On Podcast, which there hasn't been an episode of for a while, but there's a fun little backlog. Yeah, so we like went through this style preference thing and figured out what our initiation style was when it comes to sex. And so I want to do a video about how to initiate sex that includes that like initiation style preference thing, because you know how I love a good like personality quiz, but also kind of like has other stuff, other elements, other advice and info and education in it around initiating sex. Genital non-concordance, arousal non-concordance. I want to make a similar video to like the sex drive videos that I've made, and like the like arousal videos and the like sexual accelerator and sexual break. Like I want to make a similar style video to that about genital non-concordance. It has been on my list for over a year. It's not happened yet. And then I recently added onto my video ideas list that I want to do a video where I'm like trying different like sexual wellness CBD products, because this is something that has just like suddenly appeared. And I've had a lot of like requests from companies that sell like CBD lube and stuff to like help with your sex life or like whatever it is. And so far I have denied any like gifting or collaboration stuff, because I'm just one of those like skeptical people. But I'd be interested to kind of like try a bunch of different products and just be like, what actually is this? My only hesitation now is that I'm pregnant, and so I don't know if that's a good idea right now. Is there even any research about it? So I think I'm gonna hold off on that video idea for a while. Let's like maybe stay away from the CBD products for now, Hannah. There we go. That's it. Those are all of my sex topics that I haven't covered, and why maybe I haven't covered them yet. And one big massive video plug for my podcast. I hope that you are well. Thank you so much for watching my videos, and special thank you to my patrons who support me making this content and make it possible for me to be able to like expand and actually pay and hire and work with researchers and writers and all of this kind of stuff. So maybe in the future, thanks to patrons, we'll have more of these videos made in more depth. We'll see. You're also having a baby next year, Hannah. Like, calm down. Let me know your thoughts on all of these different topics in the comments. Fully formed or not fully formed. We welcome people just like exploring their thoughts and feelings about things here. I mean, that's what I'm doing on camera, and then it gets immortalized in a video forever, even though I'm like, actually, I don't think that anymore. All right. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in my next video. Bye.